All right, so we're going to now read the tweets of Tony Dokoupil. Tony Dokoupil, Tony Decapil, after the treasure chest was announced, the find was announced, Tony Decapil took to Twitter and he started talking about the fact that he had written an article about Forrest Fenn in 2012 for Newsweek, and he had met Forrest Fenn. And strangely, Tony Decapil says the treasure hasn't been found, or if it was, whoever found it didn't even know what it was. So I'm not sure what that means. I think he's implying it would be found so far in the future that nobody would know what it was. I don't know what else that would mean. But anyway, I'm going to read the tweets. And then Tony writes he has some people write back. I didn't really think of it was that interesting to show them. Except for one particular one I will mention because it was very poetic. But he got some response from people, and he decided to tell an anecdote about Forrest Fenn that I thought was very, very interesting. I think you will too. So anyway, Tony Decapil says, I don't believe this is on June 8th, 2 days after, oh my goodness, Forrest Fenn announces the find on DDay. DDay, one of the most celebratory dates in military history. The day we turned the war around and put Hitler, well, if not on the run, it was a World War II strategic victory that turned the tide, if you will, considering we were at the beach in Normandy against Hitler. And that's when the Allies realized they had a real chance of beating Hitler. D-Day, June 6th. That's the day the treasure hunt find was announced. Does that mean anything? Oh, I don't know. It's just another one of those little things that make you wonder. You know, just a coincidence. I mean, if the guy found it, the man back east, if he found the treasure on June 3rd, then I guess, yeah, pick June 6th to make the announcement. I believe Wyoming, by the way, I believe the quarantine thing, you know, some of the states had it that if you traveled to their state, you had to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. In Wyoming, that ended in, I want to say, towards the beginning of May. In Montana, where I was going to go, only a couple of weeks later, it ended on June 1st. So if the guy had, in fact, traveled to Wyoming, he would have had a couple of weeks to look. But I suspect he probably knew what he was looking for if, in fact, it was found. I have a suspicion he would probably know. I knew exactly where I was going to go. And this was the first time I ever knew exactly where I was going to go. And it was just kind of amazing when that find was announced, because I went, he must have gone to where I was going to go. And then when they said Wyoming, I said, well, but could be very close, because I always was saying the Wyoming-Montana area. I was right over the Yellowstone border going into Montana from Wyoming side of Yellowstone. Anyway. I just thought that was interesting. June 6th, D-Day. All right. Tony Decapil on June 8th says, I don't believe Forrest Fenn's treasure has really been found, and I'm certain that if it has been found, the finder has no idea what he or she is holding. I'll explain, but first, here's the news today. Tony Decapil is, what does he work for? He works for one of the network channels. And he started out as a writer, and he's a very photogenic guy. He has a wife, Katie Tour. They're both very attractive people. And at some point in his career, they kind of looked at him and said, you know, you'd probably do good in front of a camera. And then he became an on-camera guy. Anyway, this is what Tony Decapil starts tweeting on June 8th. I wrote the first big national story on Fenn back in 2012. Remember when hashtag @TinaBrownLM supposedly lost $100 million at hashtag @Newsweek? Well, she might have spent it all on my harebrained adventures, and Forrest Fenn was one of them. Love you, Tina. I think Tina Brown, he's referring to the MTV DJ. Man, that's going way back. When MTV ruled, and she was one of the DJs. But I didn't come to Fenn for the story everyone knows today, the tale of a twinkly-eyed gentleman who buried treasure so kids could fall in love with the outdoors. On the contrary, I learned about Fenn from the FBI on a grave robbing case. In 2009, an undercover federal agent took a tour of Fenns House in Santa Fe, posing as an artifact trader and wearing a recording device. The FBI later raided Fenns House as part of the biggest ever suspected case of grave robbing, codenamed Cerberus Action. You know, Cerberus, after the mythical three-headed dog that guards the underworld. He was never charged. Fenn, not Cerberus. But there had been questions for years about where Forrest had made his money. When I visited his compound in Santa Fe, I found a house that operates like a museum, but with no guards, better inventory, and a price list. It's exactly what Craig Childs said. He said going to Forrest Fenn's compound is like going into a museum. Fenn had a mummified falcon from King Tut's tomb, not for sale, a jade mask older than Jesus, $12,500, and Sitting Bull's peace pipe, spiritual centerpiece of Custer's last stand. This pipe was appraised at $1.1 million. And that was just one little room of the house. When I asked Fenn about the FBI case, he told me that he couldn't discuss it because his lawyer told him, if you talk about it, you could lose it. Then later, Fenn told me he misspoke. So we get onto the subject of The Thrill of the Chase, which is the book that he used to launch this whole treasure hunt. He wrote a poem that supposedly had all of the clues, but again, there's a darker backstory. I want to say something about that too before we go any further. Not anything wrong with Fenn writing these books. But you know, Fenn from the beginning has said he hasn't made any money off these books, and I don't think he has. We know that, like I said, The Thrill of the Chase, that money went to a trust for his grandchildren. Some went to cancer research. I believe Too Far to Walk went to Collected Works Bookstore. Lady Massey, Barb Massey's in charge of all that. I have never seen an interview where she would disclose how many books had been sold. And then, of course, what's the last book? Once Upon a While? I'm not sure. I never read it. But the point I'm trying to make is Fenn did all right with these books. If he had gotten the money, it would have probably paid for the treasure. But of course, he says it didn't, and I'm sure it didn't. So what is your point, Eric? I'm not sure what the point is. I mean, it's fine for him to do a trust fund for his grandkids. But anyway, what he did was in 2017, he actually said, someone asked him, and he was very open. He said, I think in 2017, he said Thrill of the Chase had sold 22,000 copies. If he had sold 22,000 copies at $25, it would have been $550,000. If he had sold them at $30, it would have been $660,000. And they sold them at $35, it would be $770,000 at that point in 2017 for the one book, The Thrill of the Chase. I just thought that was interesting. A lot of money made on those books. Just fine. I just thought it was interesting. It's hard to get. Like I said, Barb Massey never gives out the figures on how many books are sold. But for any of you that thought that Forrest Fenn was, making a bunch of money, apparently he doesn't on that. Forrest Fenn's a millionaire. He's a multimillionaire. I think if he did anything like retrieve, I can't stop talking about it. If he actually did anything about retrieving. If he actually did retrieve if Forrest Fenn did in fact have the treasure retrieved. I think it would have been for more personal reasons, like just stopping the hunt in a way where he could kind of get away with stopping it without anyone else bothering him, the lawsuits or anything else, or because he has future plans for the treasure chests that are of a more cosmic level for him in his life than a mere treasure hunt. Remember Fenn one time said if the treasure ever reached $10 million, he would retrieve it? And then later he said he wouldn't retrieve it because he's too old. But then you still go, yeah, but I mean, he could have Shiloh. Hey, Shiloh, get over here. Make me some coffee, and then I got a chore for you to do out in the back, and then after that I need you to go get the treasure chest. Okay, Granddad. Just kidding. Shiloh, if you ever see this, I like you, man. I'm sure you're a cool guy, but everyone says Shiloh's the guy. I don't know why. Just because he hangs, you always see Shiloh hanging out with Forrest Fenn. Eric, get back to the damn reading, will ya? Okay. So, to get back to where I was, when I asked Fenn about the FBI case, he says, my lawyer said don't talk about it, and then later Fenn said he misspoke. So we get on to the subject of the thrill of the chase, which in the book. So we get on to the subject of the thrill of the chase, which is the book that he used to launch this whole treasure hunt. He wrote a poem that supposedly had all the clues, but again, there is a darker backstory. Fenn told me he filled the treasure box with ancient figurines, a Spanish ring, turquoise beads, American eagle, gold coins, gold nuggets, a vial of gold dust, 2 gold discs, and a lot of jewelry, including rubies, sapphires, and diamonds. But Fenn wasn't done. When the time comes, he told me he wanted to shove one more element in with the bounty. His own body. His own dead body. When people find the treasure, they'll find my bones, he said. In other words, an alleged tomb raider was inviting the public to raid his own tomb. Do we not all remember that? Fenn talking about he's going to bury himself with a chest. I guess the caveat always was unless it's found. He talked at one time about going out in the desert and burying himself with the chest. Remember that? For those of you that don't know, yeah, he talked about going out in the desert at one point, not the forest, and burying himself with the chest. What if he still wants to do that? And he either... You're all going, oh my God, Aaron's back to he's talking about the retrieval again. Well, I mean, what if he was getting emails from people that thought they were going to find it? The Hearst brothers, not the Hearst brothers, the father and son team, the two that said that when they finally told Fenn where they were going to go and everything, he said to wait. And then when they said, okay, can we go now? He said, well, okay. But then the next day he announces it was found. And they feel like he kind of screwed them because he knew they were about to find it. What if Forrest Fenn wanted to get the chest back and go out someday in the future and bury himself with it? Wouldn't that be a trip? If 10 years from now, God forbid, Forrest Fenn's passed on. The man is almost 90. If I was 90, I wouldn't mind someone saying, Eric, you could pass on any day now. I'm now in my 60s, I can pass. Any of us could pass on any day now. Well, now I got to tell you another story. This is just one of those little life stories that I always have remembered. I don't know why. It was many, many years ago on a dark and stormy night. Not really. It was just many years ago. And me and my family were out to dinner somewhere. And it was my 2 sisters, my brother-in-law, and one of my sister's 2 daughters, my nieces. So at this time, my nieces are in their 20s. This particular niece was in her 20s. I'm much younger than my sisters and my brother-in-law, so I was probably in my 30s. This is a long time ago. And my brother-in-law is 10 years older than I. So they're like in their 40s, the real oldsters in the room. So at the time, my niece is very young. And we're having dinner, and all of a sudden one of my nieces, who's always been kind of melodramatic, she's kind of looking around. She's kind of, I noticed her. I said, "What's up?" She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you just look like you're just kind of," she goes, "Oh, I just had a realization sitting around here looking at everybody." She said, "I'm probably going to be burying everyone at this table." Yeah, it's a strange family, folks. It's basically the Addams family. We're all like, "What?" She goes, "Well, I mean, you know, except for my sister, who's a year younger than me, everyone else here will probably be at your funeral at some point. Not a one of us, the oldsters, the parents and my other sister and me. None of us say a word. We're all just going, holy shit, she's going to bury us." And it was only later that we go back to eating. That's an interesting concept. It was only later that I'm thinking, only in a world where everything happens like it's in a book, what's to prevent her from getting hit by a Mack truck? That Mack truck coming over the median, woo! I wish I'd had the presence of mind at the time to say, well, little Miss ABC, what if you get killed tomorrow in a traffic accident? And then she probably would have, oh yeah, you're right. What a stupid thing to say. Just one of those, this concept that life goes on this linear thing and nothing changes. Hell, folks, every damn day we're lucky to be alive. Doesn't matter if you're 90, 66, or 16. Seriously. So another thing, one time, to keep getting completely off. I remember this one time, I worked with this guy. He was just a jerk. He didn't like me for some reason. And he would say things like, well, I won't even get into all the things he'd say, but one time we were discussing video games of all things. And I mentioned something about I really love this video game. And he goes, "That's because you're old, man. For you, it's a big deal." And I'm thinking to myself, and again, did not have the quick thinking to say anything. I was going and playing Pong in college down at the local bar. Probably one of the main reasons I did so good at school. I was down drinking at the local bar, playing Pong. The old beep, 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 beep. Pong. This is really, really one of the first, simplest video games. I have played video games my entire life. Still play video games at my advanced age. But whenever people would pick on me for being older, I've now now of course it doesn't ever happen, but if it would, I would want to say to these people, I should say to these people, I've been your age, you haven't been my age. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe you look at someone in their 60s and think, oh my God, it's horrible you're in your 60s. Well, I can look at you in your 30s and say, well, I remember being 33, and I kind of remember being 33, and I was 33. You may never be my age. So I'm really one up on you if you want to think of it like that. And as far as me being the first to die because I'm in my 60s and you're in your 30s, there's no guarantee about that either. Life is binary. You're either on or you're off. Age is almost irrelevant away. Right? Because all that really matters is whether you're on or off. And if you're going to be off the next day, if someone could say, you know what, in 2 days you're going to be hit by that damn truck that keeps coming over the median and it's going to crash into you head on. How old are you? Right? You're 25. In 2 days you're going to get killed in a traffic accident. How old are you? Yeah, I'll stick with my being old. Thank you very much, because in 2 days I'm not going to be in the traffic accident. I hope. Does any of this make sense? No, it probably doesn't. It doesn't matter. Let's go on and get this over with. Okay, part 4 coming up? Could that be right? Part 4? Another side of Fenn?